So we're going to get started by going up to Substance Painter, going File, New. Document resolution, I put at 4K, you can put at 2K. We're going to select File, going to go into, that's a older file, Skyrim Mods, Morrowind, Daedric, Club, Textures. You're going to want to click your low poly for this. You're going to bring it in. Give it a second to think, and oops, there we are. There's our club. Alright, and oops, we messed up a little bit. See this all right here? That is not what we want. Not what we want at all. Alright, so I will show you how to fix that. You probably won't have that issue unless you have Zen UV. I have multiple materials here by accident, so I'm gonna get rid of all of them. New, MD Club. I should have done this before. MD Club. Yeah, MD Club, that's all it is. Alright, and then we're going to do... Oh yeah, this material that you make here, you want to make sure that it is the name of your weapon. So that's just the naming convention that I have for this specific mod pack. MD, that'd be Morrowind, Daedric, and then the weapon name that I have there, that's Club. That's how I do it. That's just me. So now we're just going to re-export the this one. We're going to do FBX, get rid of that. Done. Alright, so now we're going to go back to New, File, Select, Low Poly, OK, Discard. Alright, there we go, MD Club. So that's good because my preset that I was talking about earlier in the video of that I made to export the PBR textures into kind of converting them into specular. It's a little bit disingenuous to say that I put PBR textures into Skyrim because it's not physically possible. Basically, it's a soft conversion from PBR to specular without losing anything. I'll explain that a little bit more later, but it's important that you make sure that your material name is whatever you want your weapon name to be. Not in-game, but whatever you want the weapon file name to be. It's really important to keep that consistency throughout this entire process, and you'll see why. So, we're going to delete this, because that's nothing, and then we're going to go to Texture Set Settings, and we are going to go down to Bake Mesh Maps. I always put it at 4K. I don't do 8K, that's a little bit too much, a little bit crazy. And then you could do 2K though, that's perfectly reasonable. And then we're going to click actually first, we're going to unclick all this except for ID. We're going to click on ID, and we're going to go down to Vertex Color, because we vertex painted this. So we're going to go down to Vertex Color, Color Source, and then make it Vertex Color. Then we're going to do Bake Selected Textures, and that's just going to give us our ID map based on the vertex painting that we did. So that's good. Now we're going to deselect that and select literally everything else. All you want to do is go over to where it says High Definition Meshes. You're going to click on this little guy right here, this little file icon, grab your high poly mesh, click open, and once you have all your settings here, you can choose to use anti-aliasing or not. I usually just do a 2x2. Nothing crazy, you can go higher. And this max frontal, max rear distance, we're going to keep it at this default values for now, but depending on how they bake, if there's any artifacts, we'll go through and we'll mess with this a little bit until it gives us exactly what we want. So we're going to click Bake Mesh Maps. Alright, let's look here. See, that is that little issue that I was talking about, those little artifacts there that it has. So that's not good. These little gray artifacts, you don't want these, and the gems are all sorts of messed up. Otherwise, the model's actually looking really, really good. No other artifact. Tiny one right there, but that's not something to be too concerned about. So what we're gonna do is that can be fixed pretty easily. So here, this is my low poly mesh, right? This is my high poly mesh. The thing about this is that it doesn't line up perfectly anymore. You can see there's a ton of extra space there, and that's fine usually, but in this case it's not so fine. A little bit of clipping between your high poly and your low poly mesh is actually a good thing. I went a little bit overboard with it. You can see that is like a ton of distance to have between your high poly and your low poly. That's not good. So we're gonna go back to, that was what I was very scared of. You want to be careful when you're doing this, when you're sculpting. So we're gonna go back to sculpting, and I'm just gonna do this with my mouse, and we're going to use the inflate brush. Bring it up a smidge. We're just gonna bring this up a little bit. Oops. We're gonna just bring this guy up a little bit. Wanna get a little bit closer to how it originally was. And then we'll go into here. 15 like it was before. Subtract. Kind of topo, turn that guy back on. Oops. It's a little bit more difficult to do with the mouse. I've been spoiled. Alright, and that should perform a little bit better. Just a smidge. Alright, so now we'll save it real quick, and then we'll do File, Export, FBX, get rid of that guy there, Export, go back into Substance Painter, and then we will Big Mesh Maps and throw in our new one. Big Selected Maps, and let's hope for a better result this time. Alright, moment of truth. And it's fixed. It's not perfect, it's a little bit of artifacting right there, but that'll be pretty easy to cover up. So we don't have to worry about it too much. For the gems, okay, so I figured out the problem. So remember earlier, while we were making the low poly, we, for the gems, we overlap the UVs to save some space because there's such a small detail that having overlapping UVs on them would basically just make them look the exact same, which is usually fine. For some reason, Substance Painter didn't like that today, and having the overlapping UVs caused a bit of an issue. I fixed the overlapping UVs now, so they're no longer overlapping. Unfortunately, it bogs down on space just a little bit, but it's fine. So it's fixed now. Now I gotta rebake my mesh map for my low poly. I'm just going to deselect all, mesh map, vertex color, big mesh map, and done. Alright, cool. So now we're going to go back to layers. We're going to drag in the textured glass. That's why I initially named it, because I thought it kind of looked a little bit like glass. I don't really think that anymore. It doesn't look much like glass. But the textured little gem. Alright, so now we gotta fix the color selection. Take this off, select the correct colors now. It's acting a little funky, and that is because I still have this. I gotta remove this mask. I've known that that's an issue for a long time. I just never fixed it. So I don't want to remake the smart material. Alright, so as I'm going through these, I'll kind of explain them a little bit better. The leather actually got the right color on it, so that's nice. I don't have to fix that. I do have to fix this, however. So, that needs to be edited a little bit. So, as I edit this ebony material that I made, I'll explain it a little bit better. So, we're gonna actually get rid of this and this for now, just so I can focus on this. So we're gonna start from the bottom and go up. So this main metal material will hide everything but that. So here it has, it's looking pretty nice. I actually really like the way how this came out. So I'll just kind of go through it one by one. So base metal, that's just the base color for it right now, which is kind of like a soft gray. Then I added a little bit of finish on it using a matte finish, what do you call it, filter on it. Same color and everything, actually, but it added this, adds like this little sheen to it, and it gives it a little bit of texture on its reflectability. Usually you could do this by just adding a grunge map to the roughness, but I wanted a little bit of maneuverability with it. So I added this, and I made sure that it does not affect the metal or the roughness, because when it converts to a PBR, or when it converts the PBR to the specular, just in this one specific Skyrim instance, it gets a little bit funky. So then I added some scratches to it, just little indented scratches. I made sure that they were a lot lighter than the base metal, just because I wanted to make sure that it didn't mess with it too, that you could actually see them. Then we have the metalness. In specular textures, they use what's called metalness, and basically it's how reflective the this certain part of the mesh is. And so since this is all metal, I didn't add like a little grunge map or a mask to it or anything. It's just an even amount of metalness throughout the entire thing. Oh, I did add a grunge map. Silly me. This is just to give it a little bit more detail in its reflectability. You get the same kind of effect with the finish that I added, but this is just a little bit more, just a little something extra. So then we have the roughness. The roughness is specifically for the PBR. I think this gets converted to... I'm going to cheat a little bit. Forgot. Upper templates. We're going to go down to the template that I made. So the roughness gets converted to our glossiness. So a glossiness map in specular is exactly like a roughness map, except it's inverted. So anytime that you see a glossiness mask, you can immediately think, if you know PBR better, it's just a roughness mask that's been inverted. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's pretty much the idea of it. And it works just the same way. So there we have the roughness, aka the glossiness, and then I added a, and this only affects the roughness. And then I added, this is just to give a little bit more texture to it. Then I added this, and it is the, it's what gives it that kind of like dark ebony look. It has a little bit of a blur on it, sorry, it's literally just a color map, that has pass-through on it, and so does the roughness and the metalness pass-through. So pass-through basically allows it to affect everything that's under it. So this, all I did was add a HSL perspective filter onto it, so I can change its saturation and its lightness. So I can make it a lot lighter, or I can make it a lot darker. I like it where it was. So that's that. Now that's the main metal. That's literally just the main metal. That no bells and whistles. That's it. Now we're gonna add the dirt. So the dirt, it's a little bit intense. Actually, I really like it. The dirt isn't. When adding it, I didn't really add it as like dirt. I added it as something to kind of give a little bit more character and value to the metal itself and the way that it reflects. I personally think it looks really good. It kind of gives a more worn look to the metal. Then we have the edge wear. This is the first pass of edge wear, just to really rough it up and give some character to it. I like the amount that's on it right now. And this is the blade wear. This looks like a lot, and it is. Trust me, I know that. But on like swords and stuff, the blade wear is really good because the blade takes a lot more damage than the rest of it will, clearly. So the blade wear, usually I just have this little mask on it. All these have their own little masks on it. Almost all these, it's just a grunge map and then a sharpen map. It's nothing special. But this one, the blade wear, I also have a paint layer on it so I can distribute where exactly it goes. I'm probably gonna keep the blade wear map. The blade wear. and then just paint it out, because you can see in the reference, wherever that is, the reference, it's got some wear right here on the spikes. So I'm going to keep it there so I can put that wear on the spikes, because I like that. It makes sense. Actually, a better way to do this would to be get rid of the paint layer, add a new paint layer, and then we're going to just make this enormous and just over the whole thing. Gotta get rid of all of it. Get rid of all of it so we can go back and just add it exactly where we want it to, because we don't want it everywhere. Now I'm gonna go and grab a, here's my brush down here, my brush settings under the property panel. We're going to grab, over here in alpha, we're just gonna look for a grunge. I use this one a lot, the grunge concrete. I just really like it. So we're going to go back up here, and we're going to change this from making it black to white, and that's going to allow it to show up now. Ooh, that's not it. That's not it. Alright, we're going to do a different alpha. So that one's not giving me what I want. I'll do this one. This one's a little crazy. Ambitious. I know it doesn't look great now. Trust me, we're going to soften it up on its edges, and it's going to look awesome. Alright, cool. So now we're going to take this, and we're going to go back and take this alpha off, and we're just going to grab an actual brush this time. Let's bring this up a little bit so I can see it. I like the way that brush looks. That'll be good for this. Alright, and now we're going to bring this down a little bit. We're going to black, get the stroke opacity down. We're just going to take away some of this. Nothing too crazy. Just going to take away some of it so it has that more weathered look. It doesn't look like it was painted on, even though we did paint it on. That's movie magic, baby. Alright. Really want to get rid of those harsh edges, because that's what will give away our secrets. Those secrets are just for you and me. Nobody else can know. Alright. Cool. And it's looking pretty decent. It's looking pretty good. Now, also, one thing that I do want to mention on this is that the blade wear here, I made sure to go down and mess with the height. I know you can hardly tell just by looking at the slider, but the height is ever so slightly lower, because when something takes damage, not only does the color of it change over time, but also it physically like wears away at it. And that's important to know. Also, with the scratches and all the edge wear down here, also the height has been changed. Because if the height wasn't changed, let me just show you how it looks. Oops. If the height wasn't changed, it's like, it's not too good. But with the height changed, it really adds a grungy kind of like messed up look. I like that. Alright, cool. So now that that's done, let's go over, and I did another pass with the metalness. I know that you can't see a lot here, and you may be looking at it like nothing's changing. You can see it a little bit down here, in its reflection, but that's mainly just for Skyrim's engine to understand what the hell is going on. We're gonna add another roughness channel, just like before. Not changing a whole lot, but you can definitely see the difference. Again, that's mostly for Skyrim, so it has that look. And that's all the ebony. That's the ebony smart material that I made, and I really like how this is looking so far. It's looking pretty cool. All right, so let's go back. Let's grab our leather. I don't feel like looking for it, so let's just search for it. Leather. Yep, Skyrim leather. All right, cool. And the reason that my smart materials show up black is because when I saved them, they have the color selection on. That's just because I don't feel like going back and changing it. So, leather's looking pretty good. I'm not gonna change too much about it. I do like it in its current stage. However, it's just a little bit too damaged. So we're gonna go in and oh, I should probably go over the leather material. Nothing fancy at all. It's a base color with a fill on it to give it a little bit of extra something, a little bit of flavor. The fill on it, I believe, has a grunge map, yeah, to displace the base color onto it, because there's another color underneath it with the damages and the edge highlights. Nothing special. But the base color, I threw a grunge map in the roughness. The metallic I turned a little bit down because I don't want it to be super shiny, but I wanted to have a little sheen. In the roughness, it just has a grunge map on it. Here's a good cheat. If instantly, the best way to make anything look better instantly, just more realistic and just a lot more character to it, is just throw a grunge map into the roughness. It will make it so when things reflect on it, it gives it kind of like a little bit of a dirty, a little bit of worn look, because nothing in life is perfect. Like, even let's say you just bought a brand new desk, right? The way that the light reflects on it is not going to be 100% all the way through, because you got little grooves in the wood, maybe a little bit of dust or dog hair on it, maybe spilled something on it, it's a little bit sticky in that area, so it shines even more. Real life is not 100%. Even your phone, the way that the light reflects on your phone is not 100%, because you got your grubby little fingers all over it all the time. So that's just a really, really good way to add a little bit of realism to whatever you're making. So I'd recommend always just throwing just a little grunge map on it. This one's a very, very light one, but it does just add a little bit. All right, cool. So now we got the leather pattern. This is literally just adding those dimples to the leather. Makes it a little bit more realistic. All it is a cell material on top of the height. That's it. Has a little bit of blur, so it doesn't look like that. You could make it look like that if you want a really, really grainy, kind of like raw looking leather. Go ahead and keep that blur off, or maybe tune it down a little bit. I don't know. Not your mom. I won't tell you what to do. Grainy looks kind of cool. Maybe we'll keep it this time. I don't know. Take down that blur a little bit. You don't want it too much though. So it would look a little crazy. But all right, now edge highlights. Basically, all this is doing is just adding a little bit of blend to blend it all out a little bit, so it doesn't look so uniform like it does here. So it's not just cutting off instantly. You could make it like that. If it's only a little bit amount of wear, I actually wouldn't recommend too much edge highlights on it, but you can if you want. Got just a mask editor on it to control how much edge highlight you want. I like it up a little bit. That's just me. And then lastly, we have the damages here. That's pretty self-explanatory. Just adds a little bit of roughen up to the edges, because no leather is perfect. You can take it down a little bit. That's what this mask editor is used for. Just taking it down a little bit, maybe bumping it up a little bit. I actually don't want it too much. Down here, it would be a lot more roughed up than it would be up here, mainly because this is where your hand is and you're always touching it, stuff. So yeah. All right. So that's that. Now, last but not least, we have the textured glass. Oops. And I forgot, we gotta change it. So this material is actually something I made completely from scratch in Substance Designer. It was a lot of fun. I don't use Substance Designer too often. I'll use it probably once a month to make a material that I just can't make in Substance Painter. Something like super specific, but this is really good. I really like this material. So we gotta take off this map. I keep forgetting to do it. I originally, when I was making this, I was just messing around with it and yada yada yada. It's just I messed up, but gotta take it off. I'll do it eventually. So that's just for the gems. Here you can see it's I'm really proud of this material. I really like it. I'll just go over it with you real quick. So we'll take off everything here. There's only 4 bits to it. There's the material that I made in Substance Designer right here. Nothing special. I took off the material, the metalness and the roughness on it, just because I wanted to have a little bit more control over them. I have an HLS perspective filter on it, so I can change the color of it, because the way that I made it in Substance Designer, when I brought it into Substance Painter and put it on the model, I didn't like how overly saturated and bright it was, so I just took it down a little bit. Then I just copy and pasted the material, made it into the metalness, and it has a little bit of, it has a grunge map on it. I'm guessing it did the same thing with the roughness. No, I didn't. I didn't add a grunge map to the roughness, but got the roughness there, make sure it's real shiny, and then got a little bit of secondary dirt. There used to be a primary dirt on this, but I took it off because I realized it was too overbearing, and I just haven't changed the name yet. But it's not a lot to notice, but it does add that little bit of something right down here, just to make sure it's not so uniform. Just break it up a little bit from the rest of the model. And that is it textured. I realized that was probably pretty quick, and it might here's one thing that I always like to tell young artists, not that I'm not one myself, but artists that are just getting started out with this sort of thing. This seems like a lot of cheating that I just did right now, because I just took materials that I made in the past and tossed them onto this. But the thing is that you realize that once you get into the game industry, that's a lot of what it is. It's making those materials, those smart materials, those textures just one time, and then using them a lot. Not only because it's quicker and it speeds up the game development process and the pipeline a lot, but also because it keeps that consistency through all of the models. If I were to remake this every single time, it wouldn't look the same no matter what. And all my weapons, like, they'd probably still look fine, but they'd look different. And you want that uniform look. Call it cheating, call it whatever. It's what the industry does, and it's what you are expected to do. You're expected to make a material that's good enough that you can use it multiple times and be happy with it every single time, and that it can be applicable to different models. And that's what I did here. So I went through, and if I wasn't talking about how I made the smart materials, I probably could have just bing bang bop 10 minutes maybe, just editing them a little bit, making sure that's specific to the model, and it's done. So now we are going to export it, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how I made it. So we're going to go to File, Export Textures. I'm going to export them at 4K. Output template, don't worry about that right now. Don't worry about that either. So we're gonna go down, and I'm just gonna show you this. So this is a preset that I made myself. I was talking with another mod creator on the Nexus named Billy Rowe. Super great guy. Seriously, check out his mods. They're awesome. I'll link it down into the description below. I can't thank him enough for showing me this, because for the longest time I wanted to use my PBR textures in Skyrim, because I thought they looked a lot better. I learned using PBR. I didn't learn using Specular. I understand both just fine because I learned Specular later through school, but I think PBR textures look better. And I just like using them better. I like making them better. So I was trying to ask him, like, how do I do this? I don't, like, is it possible? And he told me, he was like, yeah, I convert my PBR textures to Specular just using a preset in Substance Painter. And I was like, whoa, what do you mean? And he broke it down for me, and together we made a preset that works really, really well. So in Skyrim, like, I also want to make a disclaimer. I am not putting PBR textures into Skyrim. That would not work. What I'm doing is I'm using a preset to convert PBR textures to a specular format that works for Skyrim. This wouldn't work for every game using specular. This one works specifically for Skyrim. It's a conversion, not a one-for-one. Basically, all I did here. So when it comes to Skyrim, it has 3 different texture sets. Technically 4 if you have an emission map but I never use emission on my weapons, so I don't bother with it. You probably won't end up using it either. But so the first one, this is your diffuse. This one's your normal, and this one is your metalness. So for the diffuse, it's just the base color. It's an RGB node with a base color, and then an alpha with the opacity. Nothing too fancy there. That's pretty standard. But then this is where things get interesting. So on the normal map, I threw in a DirectX normal map RGB, and then for the alpha channel, I put in the glossiness, which, as I said before, is the roughness map that's just been inverted, and Substance Painter will do it for you automatically. And then for the metalness, all it is the metallic map. So now, I'm going to export it as as 4K, because that's just that's the size that I like. So we are going to go to output template, and we are going to find our Skyrim PBR to specular. MD Club, perfect. Also, you need to have these naming conventions. It is very, very, very important. It's going to be MD Club _N, MD Club _M, and then MD Club. It's very important that you have that, and you'll see why in just a moment. So, also we want to put in the correct directory, so we're going to go down to, I have a shortcut on my desktop, project files, Skyrim mods, Morrowind, Daedric, club, textures, and then what I'm going to do is make a separate folder for the Skyrim textures and a separate folder for the render textures because they're different. I usually do my rendering off camera because I just re-export the textures in a different output, and I'll just throw them into Blender, take a couple renders, that's it, nothing special. Alright, cool. Select the Skyrim folder, and then we're going to do export, and it's done. Alright, cool. Save settings. We're going to save this just before we close it. But they're not done yet, because we need to convert them to DDS, because NifScope doesn't support, or NIF files in general do not support PNG, which is really awesome. It's just an old program, but... So that's that. I will meet you back when we are ready to convert to DDS, and I'll show you two different methods to do that.